You can almost picture it, even if it has been decades. That bright yellow convertible sliding across the hills of San Francisco, sunlight catching the paint just right, and Don Johnson leaning back with the kind of calm swagger only television heroes used to have. For many people, that was the moment the Cuda stopped being just another muscle car and became a piece of pop culture memory, frozen in time like a postcard from a wilder era of television. But here's the strange part. The closer you look at that car, the more the picture starts to blur. Something about it never quite added up. The sound, the shine, the shape. It all felt a little too perfect, like a story polished a few times too many. And for years, fans whispered the same question. What exactly were we looking at? Because behind that iconic yellow silhouette was a collection of secrets the studio never expected anyone to uncover. Secrets about what the engine really was. Secrets about how many cars were actually on screen. And secrets that would make even the most devoted Mopar purist raise an eyebrow. If you love classic rides and the unusual truths hiding behind Hollywood's most confident illusions, this journey may surprise you more than you expect. So let's follow the trail the production unintentionally left behind. This is where the real story of that legendary Cuda finally begins. Number 20. The fake car that became iconic. In the world of American muscle legends, authenticity is everything. Yet the most famous Hemi Cuda convertible on television was never a true Hemi, never a true 71, and never even a single car. Somehow, the illusion outgrew the reality. Viewers did not fall in love with the rare factory originals sitting in private collections. They fell for the bright yellow silhouette racing across San Francisco, even if that silhouette belonged to a collection of mismatched machines stitched together by a film crew working against impossible deadlines. What makes this even more astonishing is how the cultural memory solidified. Ask someone to picture a 71 Hemi Cuda convertible, and they will almost always recall the television version, not the real automotive unicorns built by Plymouth. The show unintentionally rewrote the mental blueprint of an entire generation. The fake became the reference point, the replica became the ideal, and Hollywood's invention overshadowed Detroit's masterpiece. It is a strange sort of immortality, born not from engineering perfection, but from storytelling power. The car that never truly existed somehow became the one everyone remembers. Number 19. Don Johnson couldn't drive stick. It is almost unthinkable today. The television detective known for confidently rowing through gears in his bright yellow convertible did not actually know how to drive a manual when filming began. The myth of the masterful driver was crafted carefully with tight edits, stunt doubles, and clever blocking. In early episodes, Johnson would rest his hand on the shifter while the car sat still. Then the scene would cut sharply to a stunt driver performing the real maneuvers in another vehicle, often one equipped with an automatic transmission disguised for continuity. Behind the scenes, the production hired an instructor who spent long afternoons teaching Johnson the rhythm of the clutch, the bite point, and the timing required for smooth upshifts. It was not glamorous. It was the kind of training usually reserved for nervous first-time drivers. Yet by the midpoint of the first season, he grew confident enough to handle relaxed driving shots, even if the more aggressive stunts remained in the hands of professionals. Ironically, half the cars used on set were automatics anyway. Sometimes the heroic gear shifting the audience heard was nothing more than sound design over a car that was shifting itself. Number 18. Stunt cars held together by hope. By the time the series reached its later seasons, the stunt cars had endured more abuse than any muscle machine was ever designed to handle. Every chase scene, every sudden stop, every jump over a hill shaved years off their structural integrity. What viewers saw on television looked smooth and effortless, but the reality hiding behind the cameras was far more chaotic. Frames were bent from repeated hard landings. Suspensions groaned under weight transfers they were never meant to survive, and engines ran far past the point any mechanic would advise. Between takes, the crew performed the automotive equivalent of battlefield triage. Welders patched cracked subframes, mechanics scavenged parts from whichever car was not scheduled for the next shot, and entire transmissions were swapped in the narrow window between a morning rehearsal and an afternoon shoot. Some cars had body panels held on by little more than quick filler and hope. Yet when the cameras rolled, the audience saw none of this struggle. Through careful lighting, fresh coats of paint, and strategic camera angles, these battered survivors seemed reborn in every episode. They were living proof that movie magic often begins where mechanical logic ends. Number 17. Camera mounts left intact. Long after the final episode aired, one of the surviving picture cars underwent a meticulous restoration. The shop handling the project expected to strip away the remnants of filming and return the Cuda to a pristine, factory-correct appearance. Instead, they made a decision that surprised collectors. They kept the camera mounts, the reinforced brackets, and even the heavy-duty wiring that once powered onboard film equipment. These pieces of hardware, scattered across the frame and interior, told a story every bit as important as the car itself. Each mount marked a specific angle used to capture Don Johnson's expressions. Each bracket hinted at a chase sequence framed from the bumper or the fender, and the scratches in the paint showed where rigs had been repeatedly attached and removed. These were not imperfections. They were the fingerprints of the show. Preserving them turned the car into a living artifact, a hybrid between a movie prop and a historical document. Instead of pretending to be a perfect 71 Cuda, it became something rarer, the most authentic version of the television legend ever to exist. Number 16. Cast signatures under clear coat. One of the most unusual restoration choices ever made for a television car happened when a picture vehicle from the series was being brought back to life. Instead of repainting the cabin surfaces to factory specifications, the restoration team preserved the autographs left by the cast during filming. Don Johnson had left his name on the dash, Cheech Marine signed a panel near the glove box, and several crew members added their signatures in places only someone familiar with the car would ever notice. Rather than removing these marks, the shop sealed every signature beneath professional-grade clear coat. The result was a time capsule you could sit in. Every line of ink became part of the vehicle's permanent identity, embedded in the finish, just like layers of paint. It transformed the car into something more intimate than a replica and more meaningful than a museum piece. Fans often describe stepping into it as stepping into the show itself, surrounded by the names of the people who made the Cuda famous. In the world of movie cars, provenance is everything, and nothing proves authenticity like a dashboard signed by the very hands that turned a fake Cuda into a legend. Number 15. Real Hemis, too valuable for TV. By the mid-90s, genuine 71 Hemi Cuda convertibles had already reached mythical status. Only a handful existed, each valued higher than an entire season's vehicle budget. Insurance companies refused to cover them for stunt work, and collectors would not rent them out, even for simple driving shots. The cars were temperamental, mechanically demanding, and far too rare to risk in the chaotic world of weekly television production. Faced with this reality, the producers embraced an approach both practical and ingenious. They built their legend out of replicas. Barracudas and non-Hemi Cudas became the stand-ins, dressed convincingly enough to fool the cameras, but inexpensive enough to survive the occasional scrape or hard landing. To the audience, the transformation was seamless. To the production crew, it was a lifeline that allowed the show to continue filming without catastrophic repair costs. In hindsight, using replicas was not just a financial decision, but an act of preservation. Had the studio attempted to use real Hemi convertibles, some of the rarest muscle cars ever built might not have survived the decade. Number 14. Interiors changed every episode. For a car that became iconic largely because of its screen presence, it is ironic how inconsistent the interior actually was. Each of the production cars came from a different background, with seats, dashboards, trim pieces, and even radio units that never matched from one vehicle to another. Rather than standardizing interiors, the crew prioritized efficiency. They had scenes to shoot, stunts to prepare, and little time to reupholster every cabin just to satisfy enthusiasts who would not notice on 90s-era televisions. The result is surprisingly noticeable today. Modern high-definition rewatchers can spot the shifting details from scene to scene. Black seats in one shot, dark brown seats in the next. A wood-grain dashboard followed by a plain 1 moment later. A steering wheel swapped out depending on which of the cars was available that day. It gives the Cuda an almost chameleon-like personality, changing subtly as the episode unfolds. For the actors, this inconsistency sometimes caused confusion. Don Johnson reportedly asked more than once, "Which car am I in today?" But the audience, immersed in the story, rarely questioned it. Movie magic often depends on viewers looking at the road ahead, not at the dashboard. Number 13. Yellow paint never matched. The bright yellow paint became one of the car's defining traits, but maintaining that signature look was far more difficult than anyone expected. Because the production used hardware store paint instead of factory automotive coating, the finish aged unpredictably. Some cars stored indoors kept a vivid shine, while others exposed to sunlight during filming dulled into mustard tones or took on a faint greenish cast. By the second season, the 6 cars displayed noticeably different shades of yellow. The continuity team fought a losing battle. They tried touching up panels between shoots, adjusting lighting to mask differences, and relying on color correction in post-production. Still, attentive viewers can see the inconsistencies. In some episodes, the Cuda glows like a freshly waxed taxi. In others, it appears deeper, nearly orange. The paint simply refused to behave like real automotive pigment. This quirk, unexpected at the time, now serves as a visual fingerprint of the show's production reality. The mismatched colors reveal how chaotic the filming schedule was and how each car lived its own life behind the scenes. The Cuda was never a single shade because it was never a single car. Number 12. A 1973 with its roof cut off. Among the 6 cars that portrayed the legendary yellow convertible, one stood out for a reason no viewer could have guessed. It was not a convertible at all. It began its life as a 73 hardtop, a perfectly ordinary coupe, until the production team decided they needed another drop top fast. Instead of waiting for the right vehicle or sourcing a true convertible, they took an angle grinder, a saw, and a tight deadline, and simply removed the entire roof. The structural reality of this decision bordered on reckless. Convertibles are engineered with reinforced frames and additional bracing to compensate for the missing top. This improvised version had none of that. The team added what support they could, but the car remained far more flexible than it should have been. For stunt drivers, being asked to perform high-speed maneuvers in a freshly decapitated coupe must have felt like stepping into a dare. Yet on screen, the illusion was flawless. The car blended seamlessly with the other vehicles, its secret hidden beneath clever framing and quick cuts. It was a reminder that in television, necessity often outruns engineering, and movie magic sometimes starts with a reciprocating saw. Number 11. Manual or automatic, scene by scene. One of the strangest production quirks was hiding in plain sight. The transmissions did not match from car to car. Some of the 6 vehicles were manuals, others automatics, and the choice of which appeared in a particular scene depended entirely on convenience. If Don Johnson needed to perform simple dialogue-driven driving, the crew preferred the automatics, easier, safer, and impossible to stall during long shooting days. For stunts, the manual cars came into play, giving professional drivers more precise control. This created a continuity puzzle that the editors had to solve through sound design and clever cuts. Gear-shifting sounds were added even when the car on screen had no clutch. Close-ups of Johnson's hand on the shifter were often filmed in a different car than the one used for the driving shots. The illusion held together because audiences were far more focused on the story than on the mechanical details. To modern viewers with sharp eyes and high-resolution screens, the inconsistencies are more noticeable. But back then, no one questioned how the same Cuda could shift like a manual in one moment and glide like an automatic the next. It was Hollywood's sleight of hand in its purest form. Number 10. Replica. Cars worth more than originals. In a twist no collector from the 70s could have predicted, the replica Cudas created for the show eventually became more valuable than some real muscle cars. These were not numbers-matching Hemi convertibles. They were patched-together production vehicles built to survive television, not concourse judging. Yet the moment they were restored after filming, something remarkable happened. They stopped being props and became artifacts. Collectors were not buying horsepower. They were buying history. They wanted the car that chased suspects through San Francisco. The car Don Johnson lounged in between takes. The car whose paint glowed under the studio lights. One restored example even carried autographs sealed beneath clear coat, turning it into a rolling museum piece. Prices soared until these screen-used replicas rivaled, and sometimes exceeded, the value of authentic, high-spec Cudas. It proved a simple truth. Cultural impact can outweigh engineering pedigree. The show transformed these replicas into icons, and the marketplace treated them accordingly. Sometimes the story behind a machine is worth more than the machine itself. Number 9. The only real Hemi added later. Throughout the show's entire run, none of the cars on screen carried the legendary Hemi engine. Not one. But after filming wrapped and the vehicles were sold off, a collector decided to rewrite that history in a way the series never could. During a full restoration, the hero picture car, the one used for close-ups and promotional images, was fitted with an authentic 426 Hemi. At last, the Hemi Cuda became a Hemi Cuda in reality, years after pretending to be one on television. What makes this transformation even more fascinating is that the restoration team preserved all the filming hardware, camera mounts, reinforced brackets, and specialized wiring. The car became a hybrid, part Hollywood artifact, part genuine muscle legend. It was no longer just a replica. It was the closest thing to a real Nash Bridges Cuda the world would ever see. Purists might debate its authenticity, but collectors embraced it. The car's identity was no longer defined by how it left the Plymouth factory, but by the role it played in shaping pop culture memory. Number 8. The 1 of 14 myth. One of the most repeated lines in the series was Nash boasting that his Cuda was 1 of 14. It sounded impressive, believable, and just rare enough to elevate the car into the realm of legend. The problem is that it was completely untrue. The real production numbers for 71 Hemi Cuda convertibles are far more extreme. Plymouth built exactly 7, not 14, and of those 7, only 2 left the factory with 4-speed manual transmissions, like the one the show claimed Nash was driving. Why did the writers pick the wrong number? No one knows for certain, but 14 has a cinematic ring to it. Rare, but not absurd. 7 might have sounded too improbable for viewers unfamiliar with Mopar history. Or perhaps the writers simply blended production figures from different trims and years. Regardless of the explanation, the line stuck, and generations of fans repeated it without ever checking the facts. This fictional statistic is a perfect symbol of how the show blurred reality. The car became rarer in fiction than the real one ever was, and the myth survived because the television version felt more real than history. Number 7. A backstory the writers forgot. The show tried to anchor the Cuda's emotional significance with a heartfelt origin story. Nash inherited the car from his brother Bobby before Bobby shipped out to Vietnam. It was a sentimental touch meant to deepen the bond between man and machine. But there was one glaring problem. Bobby appears later in the series. Alive, well, and apparently unconcerned about the priceless muscle car he supposedly left behind. This continuity slip confused attentive viewers. If Bobby survived, did he willingly give Nash the car? Did he forget about it? Did the writers forget their own lore? The show never revisited the explanation, leaving fans to speculate wildly. Some proposed that Bobby gave up the car permanently after returning. Others suggested the backstory was metaphorical. Most assumed the writers simply moved on. In truth, it perfectly reflects the fast-paced nature of episodic 90s television. Characters evolved, plot points drifted, and the myth of the Cuda shifted with whatever served the story that week. The emotional foundation crumbled, but the car remained, iconic in spite of the inconsistencies. Number 6. Wrong front bumper on the car. Sharp-eyed Mopar fans spotted it instantly. The Cuda on screen wore a rubber front bumper, a detail that did not belong on a '71 Hemi Cuda at all. The correct bumper should have been chrome, gleaming, and unmistakably period correct. Instead, the production used a rubber unit from a different year, likely chosen for its practicality rather than its accuracy. Rubber bumpers resisted dents better, reflected less light during filming, and were cheaper to replace when stunt scenes inevitably went wrong. For most viewers, this detail slipped by unnoticed, hidden beneath the charisma of Don Johnson and the fast-paced storytelling. But among enthusiasts, it became a running joke, a tiny crack in the illusion that Nash's Cuda was the pristine, ultra-rare masterpiece it claimed to be. The mismatch seemed almost symbolic. The show wanted the spirit of a legendary car, not the burden of preserving one. Yet somehow, the incorrect bumper ended up contributing to the car's identity. Fans today recognize the Nash Bridges look precisely because of quirks like this. What began as a practical compromise became part of the Cuda's pop culture signature. Number 5. Barracudas, disguised as Cudas. One of the production team's cleverest tricks involved using ordinary Barracudas dressed up to mimic the more desirable Cuda models. To the untrained eye, the two cars are nearly identical, but for enthusiasts, the difference is significant. True Cudas carried higher performance engines, sportier trim, and aggressive styling. Barracudas, by contrast, were simpler and far cheaper, perfect candidates to destroy during risky stunt work. The crew added badges, hood scoops, trim pieces, and whatever cosmetic touches were needed to sell the illusion. From more than 10 feet away, even veteran fans might struggle to tell the difference, especially through the grainy look of 90s television. These disguised cars took the hits, made the jumps, and absorbed the punishment that no one dared inflict on a genuine high-spec Cuda. It was a practical decision rooted in filmmaking reality. Save the pristine hero cars for the beauty shots, and let the stand-ins do the dangerous work. In doing so, the production protected both the budget and the rarest cars of the era, while still delivering the thrilling action fans tuned in for. Number 4. Johnson wanted a GTO judge. Before the yellow Cuda became inseparable from Nash Bridges' identity, Don Johnson had a very different vision for his character's ride. He wanted a Pontiac GTO judge, specifically one of the brightly colored, graphics-heavy models that practically shouted for attention. The judge had flair, attitude, and that loud 70s energy that made it a natural magnet in any scene. Johnson reportedly pushed for it, believing its wild style matched the bold confidence of his character. But the producers disagreed. They argued that the GTO judge was too flamboyant, too loud for the tone they wanted. The Cuda, with its long lines and convertible elegance, photographed better from multiple angles. It had presence without overwhelming the frame. More importantly, the open top allowed the camera to capture Johnson and Cheech Marin's expressions during driving dialogues. In the end, practicality and cinematography won. The Cuda became the hero car, and the judge slipped into the realm of what could have been. Today, it is almost impossible to imagine Nash behind the wheel of anything else. Number 3. Hardware store yellow paint. One of the most recognizable elements of the Cuda's screen presence was its vibrant yellow paint. Fans naturally assumed it was one of Plymouth's classic high-impact colors, maybe curious yellow or lemon twist. But the truth was far less glamorous. The production team bought the paint from a hardware store. They tested the authentic Mopar colors and found that none of them behaved well under studio lighting. Some appeared washed out, others looked oddly dull on camera. So they turned to practical improvisation. A Sherwin-Williams shade, not designed for cars at all, proved to pop beautifully on film. It became the Cuda's signature look, even if professional painters might cringe at the thought of coating a muscle car with non-automotive paint. The trade-off was visual consistency versus durability, and durability lost badly. The color faded unpredictably across the fleet, creating the mismatched tones seen throughout the series. Yet that imperfect paint became iconic. The Nash Bridges yellow now has a place in pop culture memory that real Mopar colors never achieved. Number 2. No real Hemi in any car. For a show that endlessly boasted about its Hemi Cuda, the truth behind the hood was almost comical. Not a single one of the production cars carried a real 426 Hemi. Not one. Instead, they relied on far more modest power plants. Mostly 318 V8s and a few 440 engines. Good engines, dependable engines, but nowhere near the legendary status the script insisted upon. The sound of a ferocious Hemi rumbling across San Francisco? Pure audio trickery layered in post-production. The deception was so complete that even quick underhood shots on screen never matched the myth the characters repeated. The show built a world where the Cuda was a mechanical monster, a rare and fearsome artifact of Mopar engineering. But behind the scenes, practicality ruled. Real Hemi engines were expensive, fragile, and impossible to risk in the daily grind of television filming. Ironically, the illusion worked beautifully. Fans embraced the fantasy, remembering the roar even if it never truly existed. Hollywood had done what it does best, sell a feeling so convincingly that no one stopped to question the machinery behind it. Number 1. 6 cars playing one character. Perhaps the most astonishing truth is also the simplest. The car that millions of viewers believed to be one rare, pristine convertible was actually 6 different vehicles stitched together into a single on-screen identity. Each had its own quirks, its own flaws, and its own assigned purpose. One handled interior dialogue shots with camera rigs bolted inside. Another was kept spotless for close-ups. A third endured the stunts. 2 were actually 70 models. One was the infamous 73 Coupe, with its roof brutally removed. What emerged on screen was a composite, an illusion of consistency built from a fleet of imperfect machines. The continuity team juggled paint variations, mismatched interiors, and different transmissions, all while trying to convince viewers that they were looking at one car. Astonishingly, they succeeded. Most fans never suspected a thing. This is the essence of Hollywood craftsmanship, transforming chaos into clarity, turning multiple flawed pieces into a single unforgettable icon. The legend of Nash's Cuda was never about one car. It was about how many cars it took to create the myth. Before we uncover the final truth behind this unlikely legend, here is a small ask. If stories like this, where Hollywood illusion collides with real automotive history, spark your curiosity, feel free to stay with us, subscribe, and share which clue surprised you the most. Every detail you notice helps keep these forgotten machines alive a little longer. And now, the last revelation. For all the myths swirling around Nash's yellow Cuda, the greatest twist is the simplest. The car became more real on screen than the genuine article ever was. Millions of viewers formed their idea of a 71 Hemi Cuda not from Plymouth's engineering manuals, but from a fleet of mismatched machines rolling across San Francisco under the California sun. The replica overshadowed the original. The fake became the standard. The story became the truth. That is the strange power of television. It can take 6 imperfect cars, none of them rare, none of them pure, and turn them into a symbol recognized across generations. The legend of Nash Bridges was never about accuracy. It was about emotion, energy, and the way a bright yellow convertible made people feel each time it appeared on screen. In the end, the car's legacy is not measured in horsepower or production numbers, but in memory. A machine that never truly existed became one of the most unforgettable machines of its era.